We go early because that way we're in the room already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now we go to there. There. And there. And that's just reminding us that that's where we want to be. So now we are there.
Cool. Okay. Great. Then I can see about breakfast and such too.
Yeah. There we go. Now I just got to figure out what pray tell happened to the live feed that I can't actually get it to full screen here. Like normally the studio pops up to a full page. And it's not this time.
Oh, fuck.
Like, fuck all's working properly today.
No. Of course. Had a wonderful night, and then the next day, everything collapses. I hate it.
It's just technology.
Yeah.
But the button that's supposed to be there to expand it isn't.
No. Does F11 or F12 do anything?
Well, I don't want to hang up on it is a problem.
Oh. Because I thought either F11 or F12 would bring it to full screen for you, but I don't know.
F11 or F12 may. Problem is that there should be a button here, a little expansion button.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't.
No. That's fun, except not.
Yeah, that's just absolutely annoying.
Yeah, no doubt. God. Sorry, Southwood. That sucks. No.
So I guess we leave that one as a minimal. I can't move it anywhere. It's sitting right smack in the middle of the screen, and I can't even move the view.
No.
Like normally I can, but in this case, that's not happening.
Shit.
But anyway, we'll leave it as is.
All right, soft one. Someone may be able to help you. I don't know. You can always let them know. We're having technical glitches because blah blah.
Yeah, like they're gonna understand that.
No, but it's part of your. I don't know, soft one.
I don't know. Anyway.
But I think I'm gonna go see about breakfast. Okay.
Okay, love. Yeah.
Good luck today.
Thanks. I'll let you know when we're clear. Right after we're clear, we gotta take Cam over to Mom's.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Okie doke. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Love you. Ciao.
Ciao.
Oh, that's where it went. Okay, that's better. That's much better. Okay. Whoops. Okay, we are actually here. Odd. Now, I wonder if that was the other problem. Well, today is going to be entertaining, obviously. No, pick that up and get it out of my way. And I will be right back. So, I'm going live. It is somewhere close to 7:30 right now. Here. I'm going live, though. Love you. Okay. Now I'm back. Oh, look at that. Sooner or later, I'll figure things out. But let's get things mobilized here. I'll minimize that so I can see what's going on. Oh, like that. Don't know if I'm actually saying anything yet. Well, actually, I know I'm saying something. Only I'm not hearing anything here. And considering I don't have the speaker closed. Oh, that's where it went. There we are. Okay. Okay, that's better. A little bit of a delay there, and I'm just trying to catch up with it. That's much better. Okay. Well, you certainly don't need my echo. So we'll kill that off. Because now I know it's feeding. Now I just have... And Chad, how are you? Yeah, I still stand with standard coffee. I'm just not a coffee connoisseur. I just drink a lot of it. On the other hand, I did get told by my nutritionist that because of the strength I drink coffee, I can drink as much as I desire because I'm getting water. Which is pretty much backed up by the fact that I don't get ill. Now, pen, so we can make a few notes. You know, the big thing from my standpoint is this. When I'm doing these broadcasts, the reality is that I've been through a staggering amount. You know, I've been through a staggering amount myself. Folgers usually. Maxwell I drink once in a while, depending on what's on sale. So right now I've got 2 Folgers in the freezer, primarily because Max sent one over. So I've got the Folgers in the freezer, and I think I've got 2 Maxwell House up on the counter, in storage, and another Folgers. So I got 3 or 4 kilos of the stuff here. In other words, 8 or 10 pounds. Oh, Lord. Been a long time since I've even considered that little ditty. But yeah, considering the ratio I drink it at, you know, the strength of the coffee or the weakness of it in this case, The doctor told me flat out, go ahead and drink what you will. Absolutely agree with you there. Of course, when I started drinking coffee, I started drinking it with cream, with powdered milk in it, with cream in it, because I just couldn't. I really didn't like the flavor of it that much, but I liked the flavor of it better than I liked the flavor of chlorine. Yeah, the reason I keep looking over at the side here, that's where my monitor, where I can actually read what questions come in or what comments are made. But a lot of the reason why I do this is because after everything I've been through, if I can point out what I did to get out of it, then I'll be really, really happy about it. The neat thing about it, like things are trying to move. I've had to actually reorganize or organize in the first place. I had to organize my finance, or not my finances, but my business plan. So I went and pulled the whole thing apart in order to make everything happen. You should say, oh, I don't have it handy. When I was a kid, we had an English dandy set of silverware where the spoon, don't have one hand, I don't even have a spoon handy here, where, you've got the spoon handle and then you've got the spoon itself, right? Only the way it was made, it was tilted sideways. So, of course, Dad had a friend come over one day. Dad had a friend from work come over one day and offered him a coffee. The guy goes, yeah, absolutely. So while the guy wasn't looking, he switched the standard teaspoon to this bent version. Like I said, the handle here, but the spoon sat sideways, right? So it literally sat this way. And the reason for that was so that nannies could actually feed the child, right? So he took a standard teaspoon, pulls it out of the way and puts this nanny spoon in. So of course, when the guy comes back to get his coffee, he stirs it a little and pulls the spoon out and gets his bent spoon. And he's like, "What did you put in your coffee?" I've still got the set somewhere around here. It's one of those things I won't be throwing out. But no, the way I look at it is this: if I can point out what I've gone through, if I can point out what I've gone through and maybe give somebody a little bit of a heads up so they don't do the same thing, right, then maybe that'll make their life a little easier. Now, clearly, I cannot change everybody. I've tried that for 50 years and it hasn't worked. Just about 50. I honestly don't recall the month it was I had my first encounter with having my abilities go public. But I will tell you, after a month, I finally got a hold of the professional publisher, the one that scrambled my books. Right. And here's one. There's not many people in the room right now, but here's the thing. Okay. With the Yldrbac Chronicles. Now, these were done. I'm going to show you something here about these books. Okay. Now, I had my artist in England. He turns around and does the artwork for me. And we've got a major picture of, like, there's a full collage on the back of the books. Right. So he sends the same picture both to my local printer and to this other company. Oh, good morning, Baba Yaga. Well, we were on air until 11 o'clock. I actually packed it in about 1. So I slept in this morning. I didn't get up until almost 6:30 today. So I'm actually doing good, but thanks very much. But yeah, I'll get a nap probably sometime in the afternoon. But no, the artist in England sends the same file to both these companies. One is a small company. Okay. And they're a small local company. They're literally situated about 2 blocks from me. So the back of the books, when you put them together, like this is Birth of the Wolf Pack. I actually have now a website up, which is literally rkeithandrews.com. All of the books are listed there, complete with synopses and prices and the whole 9 yards. The only thing is, at this point, they don't have an automatic hot link to buy, but there's a way to get a hold of me to order them straight through me. But this book here, if you look at the back of it, okay, you'll notice there's a border here. Okay, the overall picture takes all 12 books in this series and turns them into a full collage. Now, that's the one. Okay, and of course, they've also got the binding that when it's all together has a complete picture. Now, this is like I said, these are the books that my local printer did. Okay, now you'll notice this picture has only the one border. Well, that's because that picture links to this one, and you'll notice they match up. Now, I'm not holding them as straight as I can, but they match up to create a bigger picture, right? But here's the other thing. The spines also match up to create a bigger picture. Now, that's the books that the small printer did. Now, here's the thing that set me off with the major printer. Great big intercontinental company. Right. These are the books. These are the same books. The writing in them is the same. It's the artwork it's the cover work they did. Now, here's the spine. Okay. And see how well those line up? This was done by a major company. Okay. And when you take a look at the back of them, okay, when we take a look at the back of the books, try to figure out how to get my hands to work. These are supposed to line up to produce another picture. How? Oh, that's right. Okay. Thinking wrong here. Sorry. Anyway, apparently my hands are not going to work well because I can't get them working properly. Anyway, they are supposed to line up. Now, can we see a problem here? Okay. They're supposed to line up to make one picture. This was done by a professional, major intercontinental company. Now, I'm just a little guy. They took the exact same file. Okay, the exact same file shipped from the same person direct to them and managed to do that. Now, I contacted the major company, as soon as the second book showed up. And it really created a problem because, well, I didn't hear from them until just Thursday. Right. I hope they are, but here's the thing, Baba Yaga. I still haven't talked to them. I'll be talking to them on Monday. These ones here that I showed you, these are the ones that come directly from me. The problem is that the shipping cost is insane. Okay, they sell for about the same amount. The only problem is the shipping is retarded for it. Right. So I had to include the shipping cost, or I couldn't afford to reprint. But I took those books down that the major company did to my local printer, and she took one look at them because I showed her hers first. Her first comment was, "Oh no, I'm off by 1/8 of an inch on mine, like on the ones I produced." I said, "I didn't bring them here to complain about yours." Then I showed her the ones that the major company made, and she goes, "How could they screw that up that badly?" Right. So these books right now, the only way you're going to get the max set properly is quite literally directly through me. Right. And this is why I said, and I wonder if I can put it in there, I'm going to see. Hopefully it doesn't create a problem. We'll find out in about 10 seconds. And what time are we? 8 o'clock. Let's see if this works. It should. Oh, my left hand has not been working well today. This site here, this one I just opened up. Okay. That website is where you'll find all the books listed, all the prices. And that was one of the big things that I had to deal with. Okay, that I had to get organized. But what I came to the understanding of, and this is a very definitive message for anybody that's trying to get something done. First and foremost, what I found from personal experience is that major companies, they don't put the same effort in. Okay, they really don't pay any attention to it. Your smaller local companies are a whole different ballgame. Okay. So what I ended up doing, like that's what I've been doing with that. And of course, I've already got the designs for the third book in this series. I've already got them laid out. I've already got them actually done for the next 2 books. So, with that in mind, that's just my rant for the day. Needless to say, I'm not overly impressed. But where it comes to getting out, and this is what I should be really focusing on, I've been working to try and get things organized so that I can actually get things moving in a more succinct fashion. Okay, now this is all part of a major project. But in order to get a major project done, you break it down into smaller tasks that are 15 minutes to half hour in length. Where it comes to getting out of debt, okay, oh, and don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, absolutely, there's a little button down and a little symbol down in the bottom right corner of your screen that you can hit to subscribe. Okay, I think that's what that thing does. I don't know. No, that goes full. I don't know. Still working on trying to figure all this stuff out. Anyway, I'm not going to play with that. The real trick to it is this. When you're looking at your finances, first thing you got to do is figure out what it costs you to run your house. Okay, in order to use your money, budgets, I'll tell you what I found with budgets is this. A budget does not work unless you have a definitive amount of money coming in. Okay, it's just that simple. If you've got X dollars coming in, like I know with one contract that I've got coming in, it's always the same amount. Therefore, a budget for that chunk of money can be done. But where it comes to a budget, if you're on a wage and if you're on an hourly wage, you won't get the same amount every month. Therefore, a budget, I find more often than not, doesn't work because you're guessing at what you've got coming in. But tracking the money works like an absolute charm, which is why I track the money I've got. I've got bank, I recommend have 2 active accounts. One where anything automated goes out of it. The other one is your working account. Okay, that way you can make certain that you're on top of the ball game. I gotta ask Baba Yaga. Yeah, I'm definitely on the West Coast. I take it you're over on the East Coast, or are you actually over in Europe somewhere? That's just me being curious. But you figure out how much money it costs to run your house. Okay. do understand I have a very distinct way of looking at things. Ah, perfect. Thank you, Baba Yaga. I've been down there. It's beautiful country down there. It's absolutely gorgeous country down. And I was down a number of years ago. I was down in El Paso and Houston. I got friends down there. I don't travel much anymore. Gee, I can't imagine why. But no, when you figure it out, this amount here, okay, this 3,800. Now understand, I require 2,500 to run my house in order to cover bills, insurance, your rent or your mortgage, depending, your transportation, some for entertainment, some for savings, and of course, food. And let's not forget you've got clothing and what have you that you may require. But you figure out how much it costs you to run your house. Okay, now I can run mine on 2,500. But the trick is you start with 2,500 here, right? And, there you have. We have legally acquired a minimum of 3,800 by August 31st, 2022 at 23:59, which really is military for 1 minute to midnight. You start there and you target. If you start with what you require. Okay. In my case, months ago, I started at 2,500. That helps bring the energy into balance so you can actually draw the necessary finances to you. Once you've got that, okay, now you start drawing the money in. Keep tabs on it. Every time you break that barrier, push the limit up a little again. Yeah, many people like to prepay. My problem with prepaying is I lose track of what's going on. That's a personal thing. If you can prepay and get it out of the way, then you're sitting in good shape. Okay. And, that definitely works nicely. Like a lot of people will use, especially for utilities, they will use an equal payment setup, which again gives you a definitive, this is how much money I'm going to be spending. But it can cause a hiccup at the back end of it when they do the balance point. I know one person that uses the prepay method, and they pay upwards of a year in advance, and then let it cut down. Right now, I think they've got 6 months they don't actually have to pay for their power. But again, which is, and like I said, that works really well. YJ is just saying they tend to pay for 6 months to a year in advance, which is an idea I haven't personally worked with, but it's not a bad idea to look into. I know that there's a lot of different ways of doing things, but you break your bills into 3 categories. Your living expenses, which is literally, that is your rent or your mortgage, because rest assured, if you're still paying land taxes, even if you've paid the entire property off, if you're paying land taxes, then you're still essentially renting. You're leasing from or renting from the government. But that's still better than being out on the street. So whether you call it rent or a mortgage, doesn't matter. Your active bills, your living expenses, cover your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, one credit card. Okay, in today's world, a credit card is it's not imperative, but does make things really handy. Okay, but you use one credit card as a utility, meaning you keep it active, you keep paying it off. Okay, and you keep on top of it. And then you have to have your entertainment. You've got to have your food. Okay, these are all things that include in. Yeah, that's quite often the case. I think I'm spending between the internet, and I'm on TELUS. So between the internet, 2 landlines, and my cell phone, I'm probably paying close to $400 a month for those. And one of them I'm about to shear off because nobody calls me except scam artists. And I don't need any more scam artists. But you break your bills down into 3 categories. Your living expenses, your interest accruing debts, that's the other credit cards or leases that you've got, lines of credit, that sort of thing. And then you've got the debts that you owe that maybe a friend loaned you and it's a principal only. There's no interest included. That's where you start with it. Okay, you figure those out, then you line them up so that you've got your biggest bill at the top and work your way, monetarily speaking, to the lowest bill. Now, some people will tell you, take a look at the ones that are charging you interest and pay off the one with the highest interest rate. Well, I'll tell you why I do it the other way. Okay, if you target the lowest monetarily speaking bill first of the interest accruing debts, keep your living expenses covered. Okay, and the 2 critical ones in your living expenses that you cannot work around are your rent and your power. You would be amazed how many people have called me up and gone, I'm having serious financial difficulties. I'm behind in both my power and my cable. I've got to get my pay and my cable paid because, what else am I going to do? That's my only entertainment. And they put the cable as a priority. And I'm like, people, if you don't have power, your cable isn't going to matter. So you make sure that you get those 2 first ones dealt with. Now, the reality is the one bill that most people forget about in your living expenses is 1% of your gross income. When 1% of any check that comes in, put in your pocket. This is $1 out of every $100. Put it in your pocket as mad money. This is your free money. This is your money to go and play with. Go and have a coffee. Maybe if you build up enough, go and have a meal out. Okay. But the reason for $1 out of every 100 doesn't sound like a lot. It doesn't do a thing it doesn't do a functional thing to your ability to pay bills. But what it does do is it changes the feel of the money coming in from I'm working to pay my bills to I'm working and paying my bills. And I will tell you that is one of the biggest keys right there. Then once you've got your living bills taken care of, take a look at your interest accruing bills. Now, obviously, you're going to want to deal with the minimum payments because the interest is just going to carry on. But then take that surplus that you've got, whatever you've got left over, and dump the whole thing on the smallest interest accruing debt that you've got. And the reason for it overall is because it is easier, psychologically speaking, to have one big bill than 15 small ones. Psychologically, it's easier to cope with one payment. This is why so many people go after I was going to call it amalgamated, but I forget what the actual term is. They merge the loans all into one debt. The reason they do that is because psychologically it's easier. It's easier to cope with. So you take a look at things, and that's where we start. But you're using your money. Now, I will tell you, I was guided twice to bankruptcy by professional financial advisors. What I came to understand is the only people that benefit from that are the financial advisors, the bankruptcy trustees. Because if you ever feel you have to go that way, first and foremost, they make certain they get their money, and then you're walking away from a debt you legitimately accrued, and the people that you owe the money to, they don't get their money either. And that is very true, YJ. YJ's just saying the sooner the small bills are cleared, the less actual bills you'll have overall, and that will leave bigger sums to pay the big ones down faster. That is exactly the whole catch to it. But you'll notice that you're using your money. You're using your money to do it. You're not taking a loan out to do it. Loans are necessary on occasion. Okay, and I don't, I look at loans and go, okay, yeah, they're a debt. Sometimes the cost of paying them off, like the money to pay them, is better than the stress involved in not having them paid. Malu, glad you could join us. The reality is the less the bills are, the less the bills you have, the less number of bills you have, the easier it is to mentally cope with it. And as you bring your stress level down, your energy level goes up. Net result, you're able to do more in order to draw things. Now, the neat part about it is you got one of two choices. We're taught as we're growing up, if you're having trouble financially, cut back, don't spend as much money. And that's a great idea. It is a functional method. Okay. It really is a functional method, but you do have another alternative. Cutting back works to a certain degree, but there comes a point when there's no more cutting back available. So your options are you can either cut back or do like I decided. Okay, find another way to improve your income. Okay, now here's something else that I've done. When you're looking at business. Now understand, running a household or running a business, it's the same thing. You literally are doing exactly the same thing. You're still having to pay attention to your rent, your utilities, your cost of goods, as in if you're at home, you've got to buy groceries, you've got to buy clothing, this sort of thing. Right? When you're running a house or a business, it's the same thing. Now, when it comes to a business, if you're having trouble with business, there is a neat little trick to it. Now, I figured out something. Everybody in business knows you've got to advertise, but work with what you've got. Now, I've asked this of people before, but does anybody in the chat room actually know what the number one, bar none, method of advertising is? The number one most effective. Okay, there is only one answer to that, by the way. There's a whole lot of answers as to what people think, but there's only one answer that is actually the top of the totem pole. And that'd be the one right there, Baba Yaga. I believe that gives you the thumbs up here. Word of mouth advertising. Well, in all fairness, Malu, you do have a point. Rumor does work, but rumors spread by word of mouth works much faster. Okay. It can be, but I prefer the positive, the positive, publicity. I was actually told one day, if you ever want to make your business grow in a hurry, create a scandal. I am recommending you do not do that. Karmic law is simple. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Now, I will tell you this, and I've already laid it out. I checked the algorithms for myself. All advertising has to be done. It's all got to be paid for. But the one advertising method that nobody that I know of pays for is word of mouth. Personally, I found a way to track it. And therefore, especially where it comes to the books now, okay, I figured out a way where I can actually return. It's only a small amount, but I figured it out where I am putting aside of the money that comes in. Like, for instance, when one book is sold, when I sell, this is the backbone. This one book here is the backbone of how I got started. That little one. Okay. You'll notice it's not very big. But this little book, okay, I had to work out prices because when you're striving to get out of debt, you got to know where you are. And that's the one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning. Before you start figuring and lining the bills out, list off everything you owe, right down to that nickel you owe the neighbor. Good luck on that one. Okay, you list off. Who did we just get in? Low Pro, how are we doing? You list off all your bills on a long column, whether it's a living expense, rent, utility, your food, whatever, doesn't matter. It's a bill. Now, your food is an odd one, but you list off all your debtors, as in credit cards, lease payments, lines of credit, and all the little bills that you owe. Everyone, even if you owe somebody only $15, list it down on that total list so you get an idea of how far in debt you really are. Now, for me, I can tell you right now, I am just about $40,000 in debt, but that has something to do with the fact that I turned around and bought a car a couple of months ago. Okay, so you list off that bill. Now, this little book, I take one of these, right? Let's just make sure I've got the right information in front of me because, well, that would be an idea. Let us just call up the website because that's where I've got everything stored at this point. Just popping that up so I can go like this. Hit that and call the website up. That way I can get the information exactly what you're looking at. There we go. And just a couple of clicks and away we go. Go down to that one. And I did. Okay. Now this particular book. Okay. Yes, it is $20 delivered to your hand. Of that, though, only $10 is the actual book. The other 10 is shipping, which unfortunately gets expensive. So what I did was I worked out a way where this book, if anybody has bought this one or bought any of the other ones on my site, each one I track independently. And I take a look at that. And if somebody refers a friend and says, look, I picked up this book, here's where you get it. Okay. And I know who has actually referred them. I keep tabs on that because I do end up paying for word of mouth. Figured out a way to do it, but you take a look at your bills and you start targeting the small ones, the small interest accruing ones first. Okay. And the reason for that is because, well, let's face it, they're charging you to wait for their money. Live recordings are a pain on occasion. As in, you end up with a tickle and you can't do anything with it. Let's go back to where we were. Depending on what you're doing, you are absolutely right, Malu. Preserving food in glass jars is an excellent idea. They still have a shelf life. Apparently, it's going to be one of those days. Neat thing about homemade preserves is what's going into them. It doesn't actually save you a lot of money, it turns out, but it sure cuts down on the amount of toxin. You're going to have to forgive me for the throat seizing up. That's just the way things are going to go today. One of the drawbacks of a live feed. I never had a press pot. What I learned to do was I learned to seal them in the oven. I originally did them on a pot on the stove, but I was like, I'd be making applesauce, and I'd be putting 7 into a pot on the stove at a time, and I would usually lose one that wouldn't seal until I started doing in the oven, at which point I put somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 in the oven and come out with only losing one, maybe two. But I got them all done at the same time. It absolutely is better. Fresh food is definitely better than canned. Okay. I don't have room for garden. I'm in an apartment. And if I keep a plant growing, I'm doing well. Never mind the vegetable ones. I have trouble keeping it. I used to be able to kill an air plant in 2 days. But any way that you can save money, the other thing that will help immensely is if you've only got $1 to your name and bread costs $2, what's going to happen is you look at it going, I can't even afford a loaf of bread. The neat part about that is and this is why I say that working together, we can make this happen. If you talk to your neighbors, okay, maybe you're living in a poor area of town, or you know somebody that is. If you've got only $1 and your bread's costing $2, you get together with the neighbor and you both pitch $1 in, you buy the loaf of bread, and you split the bread and you split the loaf in two. Now, granted, that is still not much food, but it's better than not having anything. YOLO Pro, I think we were talking about vegetables, not how to make vegetables. I've got friends that use marijuana, and Lord knows I used to myself a lot. Right. I went way past the idea of smoking my fair share. I had way more than my fair share. But have I ever had a problem with people using it? The only people I have a problem with using it are, seriously, if you suffer from hallucinations when you're using it. The logic says don't use it. It's just that simple. I don't permit it to be used in my house, period. But then I don't use the stuff. So even my best friend who does use it, he uses it quite literally because it saves him from bouncing his face off the floor due to an epileptic seizure. Yeah, you can. There's a lot of Malu in the grocery store that I go to. They've got a section where the stuff is almost expired, and they'll cut the price in half. Well, the reality is, food does not expire on the day they say. They just say it's best before. You do have to be careful. The reality, just trying to catch up on that. Now, I think that's your name, and hopefully I get this right. We've got somebody that's just entered the chat room here. That one time I was abducted by aliens. That is your name. Welcome aboard. When you're looking at making ends meet, the better connected you are with your neighbors, the better off you are because you can, and it works even if you've got a fair chunk of money. Because the way grocery stores work is they go out and they buy in bulk. Well, if you can go and buy with a friend and you can split the cost, you can buy better bulk. But you got to be careful with bulk. Okay. You really have to be careful with bulk because these sales that people talk about, that's what kills a lot of people. Okay. It's a great idea. 2 for 1. You buy, if you buy two bottles of salad dressing, for instance, okay, and it's got a perishable date on it, and this applies much more readily to yogurt. Okay, if you're buying two bundles of it, and they're giving you $1 off the second one, that only works if you've got somebody else to take it off your hands, or if you're going through a staggering amount of food. Okay. I do love some of the comments that come through here. Not the questions. That's what sidetracks me on occasion. It does keep things interesting. But when you're looking at getting out from behind the 8 ball, any method that is legal that can help you get there is the key to it. But by working with the people around you, and I don't mean by borrowing money from them. Okay, like I said, if you only have enough to buy, if you've only got a couple of dollars and you need $10 to buy a bag of potatoes, if two of you have $5 each, you buy the $5 bag, okay, and you split it in half, and both of you take half of it home. This will save you that little bit of money. Now, again, I did mention right at the beginning, you take 1% off the top of every check that comes in. That goes into the pocket of everybody in the household. Okay. The reason for it is because everybody theoretically is helping with the housework to make the house run properly. Maybe they're doing the cooking for you. Maybe they're doing the laundry. But everybody is helping. So by taking that 1%, so out of $100, you take $1 for every person in the household and hand it to them. That's mad money. That's for them to go out and buy a chocolate bar, buy a toy, buy a coffee, whatever. But that's every complete 100. There comes a point where your amount of money coming in won't even accommodate that. Okay. Now, by doing that, you'll change the energy of the money coming in from I'm working to pay my bills to I'm working and paying my bills. And that right there will alter your energy level. It will alter your stress level in a positive fashion. Okay. And this is how you turn around and make things start to move. The other issue is with this, and when I started this, I had $2,500 in here. Okay. As you can see, I'm up to 38. Now, because last month I only drew in 3,600, I'm leaving that 38 there for this month. But that's 38 combined. Now, the other thing here, if you're running a business, okay, especially if it's home-based, okay, you take a look at this, and this says Inner Voice Enterprises has legally generated a minimum of $700 by August 31st, 2022. Now, that 700 fits inside this 38. So really, the rest of this is 31. But the reason I keep this handy, okay, is to remind myself just exactly what I'm aiming for. Now, when it comes to, by the way, referring to that neat little advertising setup that I did, I knew there was a problem when I first set it up. So I talked to a computer programmer, asked him to find out the flaw. He told me there wasn't one. So I took it to a mathematician and asked him the same thing. And he came back and told me there was no flaw. I knew there was a flaw. I just knew it. Okay, so I kept poking around until I figured it out. The flaw was I was looking at the whole thing, at the entire package of income, as one item. What I found was if I split the tracking into every one of the books or every form of income I've got, okay, by doing that, it created a crossover. And because what happens with advertising is this. Okay, now do understand, there is a big difference between a multi-level marketing program and advertising. Okay, multi-level Everything in existence in the way of business is built on a pyramid. You've got somebody at the top and everybody below. You've got somebody at the top and everybody below spans out. You've got your owner, your general manager, you've got the assistant, the assistant manager, and then you've got department heads and employees. So it is built like a pyramid. Same way the government sets it up. So this idea of telling people that pyramids are a bad thing, they are a real thing. And even when you look at the physical constructs, pyramids are an absolute power base. But here's where Western society has completely screwed things up. There was a game I played when I was in kindergarten. Okay, and they called it the broken telephone, where they took every kid in the class. So in that point, there were like 20, 25 kids. We'd all line up against the wall, and the teacher would come to the first one. She'd write something down. Okay, she'd write a message down. She wouldn't show anybody. Then the idea was she would whisper in the ear of the first child in line that sentence. Try this yourself if you've got access to a bunch of kids or a bunch of adults for that matter. It's a great way to actually get the point across. She wrote a short one-sentence message down, whispered it to the first child. That child whispered it to the next, and so on until you get to the other end. Well, by the time it gets to the other end, it doesn't look anything like the original sentence. Even as adults, honestly, it's an interesting game. And come to think of it, just because we went down that road, okay, it can be an even funner game if you happen to be one of these groups of adults that like drinking. Get a few shots in you and see how well that game works. What you'll see come out the other end could be absolutely hilarious. But the reason I bring the game up is this. In Western society, your owner says, this is what I desire. He tells the manager, and it gets spread out down the line. Well, by the time it gets to the broom pusher, the broom pusher has absolutely no way of knowing what the CEO actually wanted. And more often than not, what happens is it gets scrambled partway down, and somebody in a midline management position, or for that matter, upper management, decides to change the message for their own good. Well, the broom pusher isn't going to know it. Now, this is what Western society has done. Eastern society, from all my research, what they do is the CEO goes, okay, this is what I want. He goes all the way down to the broom pusher and goes, this is what I require, what I desire to have. What do you require in order for me to get that? Now, I am an absolutely firm believer that the people at the top of the totem pole, absolutely, they've done the work, and they're the ones, somebody's got to be at the top. Absolutely, they should be making more money, than the person at the bottom. They've got more responsibility. They've got more to take under consideration. But do not kid yourself. Okay, the person at the bottom. Here's just a little side note for you. If you're working in the hospitality industry, does anybody know out of these three positions, which one of these has the most power in the kitchen? The head cook, the sous chef, or the second cook, the waitresses, or the dishwasher? Okay, inside the kitchen, who's got the most power? I'm just curious to see what people come up with. Do I have an answer for it? Absolutely. Now the reality of it is, from my standpoint, I look at things, if I'm going to work with tools, you're absolutely right, Baba Yaga. Low pro. That is where most people go. The head cook is told they've got the most power, but watch what happens. Okay, the cook makes a mistake. Okay, and the food doesn't get done absolutely perfectly. So, I like your thinking there, Malu. But we know what happens with planning. They planned the Titanic was going to get to New York. The head cook goes, I'm going to make this perfect dish, but something goes wrong with the dish, or the dish is done perfectly, and the customer doesn't like it. Okay, the customer doesn't like it. Well, usually the waitress will be able to actually compensate through good service or through proper talking and what have you. They can smooth it out and leave the experience positive. If the waitress screws up on the delivery, on the time it takes her to get the food to you, sometimes the quality of the cook of the food coming out will balance that out. But the reality is, if the dishwasher messes things up and the cook doesn't have the dishes to work with, the owner of the company it's a wonderful thought, but in all fairness, the owner of the company does not actually have as much power as you might think. And I'll get to that in just 10 seconds. By the way, owner of the company, head of the household, same thing, same position. But if the dishwasher screws things up, the waitress is not going to be able to make the experience enjoyable if the dishes are dirty. Okay, the cook's not going to be able to do a thing if they don't have the clean dishes to put it on. And this is why when you take a look at somebody that is in a dishwashing position, quite frankly, they are just as important as every other member of the team. Now, where it comes to the owner of the company, okay, the owner of the company can lay out all the goals that they desire. I'm personally in the process of laying out, and I don't think I've got it in range here. Nope. I am in the process. I've already got laid out the superstructure for running a major corporation. I'm in the middle of planning and starting to put the money aside to build an active recovery center. Okay. To actually build something where people are actually taught. They're taught how to heal, and I don't mean just modern medicine. It's a combination of all the different methods, including the education and this sort of thing. Because I'm a firm believer that if it gets put under one roof and linked together properly, it can work. But what the owner of a company does is says, this is the vision I've got. And it's absolutely imperative, okay, that you have a solid, it's absolutely imperative you have a solid understanding of what you're aiming for. But if that message does not get, and this is where hands-on owners are handy. If you're an owner and you walk into the business and you talk to the dishwasher, find out what the dishwasher is doing. Okay, find out if they've got what they require or what would make their job easier. Now, obviously, if I'm talking about dishwashers, I'm talking about the restaurant. If you're looking in a store of any form, you want to talk to the stock boys or the stock girls, I don't care. Okay, find out what they require to make their job easier. Actually, I shouldn't say easier. Okay, I should say more effective. Okay, because everybody, when you're striving to run any business, including a household, the owner, the head of the household, certainly has this plan. Okay. Yeah, I mean, sadly, Malu, the number of pronouns, like I always had this issue of, going men and women. And with the number of pronouns out there now, I'm just not bothering. From my standpoint, it's very simple. If you're in that position, number one, you should be paid equally. You should be given the same respect. A dishwasher should get the same respect as the owner does. Okay, it's just that simple. I remember being in a restaurant one day, and I saw this guy in a business suit tearing an absolute strip off. How's that working for you, Lopro? Lopro goes, on my job site, we need good laborers, and we need good right-hand men. What about left-handed ones? the reality is you require, and work ethic has absolutely tanked. And that's just my personal opinion on what I've seen. But an owner does not deserve any more respect than the dishwasher. Certainly they have more privileges. Okay, kind of goes with owning the place. But you've got to treat the people that you're employing or the people you're living with you've got to treat them decently in order to make things run smoothly. The reality is, low pro, there are some industries where a left hand and where the whole setup is set up for right-handers, especially when you look at some of the assembly lines. Yeah, I kind of figured you were there. And so was I, in all fairness. The reality is, it doesn't matter as long as somebody, you can certainly discriminate in terms of saying, okay, we need you, driving nails. You've only got one hand, you're not getting the job. Okay, it's just that simple. The military wouldn't take me. The military wouldn't take me. Something to do with automatic weapons and epileptics. And yet the same government that wouldn't give me an automatic weapon, and honestly, I'm quite happy they didn't. But that same government turned around and gave the go-ahead to train a clinical paranoid schizophrenic in demolitions. I mean, the reality of it is, as long as the person is able to do the job, and what we've got to remember is where we're looking at getting out from behind the eight ball is not just one person's responsibility. Yes, if you're the one that is behind the eight ball, then absolutely, it's your responsibility. Get all the guidance you can. Get all the help you can. Okay. But make certain, if you've got kids living at home, that you're teaching them how to handle things. Because here's the thing. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame. I could go down that way. The reality is, Malu, there's a lot of things going on right now that are absolutely backwards. But when we take a look at the individual, okay, and we get the individual sorted out by extrapolation, if you've got several individual houses that get sorted out, then you now have a small cluster, and that can expand. And this is why, when I say you work at it one step at a time, that's where this list I keep talking about comes in. You break your goals down into 15-minute to half-hour tasks where possible. Get any assistance you can, but remember, you're going to have to be the one doing the job and doing the work. See, when I wrote this book, I kept it in very small form. Okay, very simple terms. You can see it's not much to it. Okay, which is why, because it's such a small book, this is why the book itself is only $10, but then I gotta cover the cost of shipping, which is why I sell it at $20. Because if I don't, when I look at the cost of printing and the cost of, never mind the amount of time it took to write it, that side doesn't matter to me. Okay, the amount of time that I take to write it, that's just what it is. But I'm doing my best to get all the information I'm sitting on down on paper. So, of course, I've got 10 other books in this series that are already lined up to go, covering everything from spirituality, to career. This covers business. Now, the difference is the business is if you're running it. Okay. Career is if you're working for somebody else. That's the way I differentiate it. Okay. But I'm looking, and there's a number of different books there. I'm in the middle of writing one that is literally designed to show people how to handle money when you don't have a lot. Okay, there's lots of books out there that'll tell you if you got $40,000 or $50,000, then this is how you can make it grow. Well, I'm telling you, that's a great idea if you've got $40,000 or $50,000. Okay. At one point, I'd have to check back. I don't think I ever broke 100, but I was certainly over 80,000 at one point. Of course, I was in debt. And now, aside from the car I just bought, I don't owe anybody anything. I owe on my active credit card and my standard utilities, but I'm saying quite nicely at this point. All you do is draw. You take that triangle and just make the circle touch the edges. Now you've got a circle. Just not. Baba Yaga was just saying, I don't have enough people for a circle of trust, so I settle for a triangle. Yeah, me, my wife, and my dog. I don't have a dog. Don't have a wife. But I understand where you're coming from there. The reality is, Baba Yaga, trust and I do not get along well. Okay, I trusted a major corporation to do a job, and if you look at the beginning of this video, you'll see just how badly they botched it. Okay, but every book that I've got, every book I've written, is available directly through me. If you go to my website, you can find all of the books listed, what they're about, and they're all orderable directly through me. I've got them in stock. And I keep them in stock for that reason. Now, thus far, my website designer is doing a fantastic job on keeping things upright and handling questions when I have them for her. Because myself, technology doesn't work well. And this is the thing. When we're talking about working together, the reality is you don't have to know how to do everything. Okay, the best CEOs in the world don't know how to do everything. What they know is how to find the people that do know how to do the stuff. That's where the critical factor is. So what you end up looking at is you get the finances organized so that you're taking out the smaller ones, wiping out the small debts. This will help drop your stress levels. And I will tell you, the lower your stress level gets, as a counterpoint, your energy level will climb. Now, I'm hoping this is making sense to people. Gee, I always considered that you just wear 15 hats. And then as you get bigger, like I was asked, because all of my bookkeeping is done by hand. It's not automated. I set it up on a spreadsheet. And so I guess technically it's automated. I used to do it just on paper. But I got asked, well, if you're tracking this system, now understand the way that I worked out my advertising costs, okay, and the way to track the profit sharing for my company, okay, I figured it out with an algorithm that I don't have to change the algorithm at all. It will handle it nicely up to generating $1 million in income, $1 million a month in income. But the trick is to get clear what you consider successful. Okay, your level of success may be just, I'm running a house that I'm happy with. Okay. Oddly enough, you're sort of right there. Business is not just in memorizing. Baba Yaga, that came out well. Baba Yaga said business is no longer a game of memorizing information. It's a game of indexing information. You don't have to store it if you just have to know where to access it quickly. I'm going to throw a wrench in that because I got told the same thing where it came to science. Absolutely, it does matter to know where to access it. However, when you take a look at some businesses, a friend of mine is a demolitions expert. Okay, as in he blows things up for a living. Well, used to. Okay, and knowing where to find the information on what is going to detonate with what, or especially if you're working in a lab, knowing where to look up the information to be able to stop things is great. If a chemical reaction goes a little sour, knowing how to find it is a great idea. But if you don't have it on the top of your head, you're going to have a problem. Okay, if you don't have that on the top of your head, you don't have time to look it up sometimes. In business, this is why I recommend, whether we're talking an actual business or your home, get what I call a policy book together. A policy book contains either a policy book, some people call it procedure, operations and procedures. But what that contains is, here's the policy, here's the date I'm making the policy. For instance, for me, I do a lot of work in my office, but in order to make that work properly and to handle it down the road, what I've done is I've got a policy that on the 15th of the month, the date I did it was yesterday. I put my policy book together yesterday. I rebuilt the whole thing. And the first policy I put down was dated August 5th of 2022. From here on out, on the 15th of the month, and on the last day of the month, my company will be paying me $15 per hour out of the company into my pocket. Okay. That way it has, and the reason for that is to provide a continuous stream, a continuous track record of how much it's costing me to run what. Okay. I've also got listed that all bills get paid the moment they come in. The reason for that. So you've got the date, the policy, and the reason for it. And the reason for that is to get them out of the way so I don't have to worry about them. It keeps the bills up to date. Now, the neat little thing. Yes, exactly. There are usually exceptions to every rule. Okay, I'm a prime example of that little fiasco. But by having all bills paid, it gets it out of the way. Right, and I don't have to worry about it. Much like paying your utilities ahead of time. But what I found is if people turn around and you have these policies in place, okay, they've got the date you made them, what the policy was, and why you made the policy. Okay, then I recommend every 3 months, as in every quarter, go back over the policies, make sure they still hold. Make sure they're doing what they were designed to do in the first place. If we go back in technology ways, maybe the company was running fax machines, and all of a sudden, fax machines went the way of the dodo bird. Well, when you put a fax machine out, is no longer relevant. Now this applies to households, businesses, corporations, governments. These rules, all these guidelines, all work the same. You take a look at your government. There are laws in Canada. I love this one. You can look for really silly laws that are still on the books in different countries. In Canada, it is still listed on the books, on the law books. It is illegal to board an aircraft while in flight. Okay, now this is a policy that realistically has no functional use being on the books anymore. Okay, but at the time, people were actually able to do that. Okay, and it's not a good idea, by the way. So you have the policy, you have your policies in place, even for running a household. Things like one of the policies in many households really should be, if you move something, put it back. If you open a door, close it. These are simple, easy to run policies. And the trick to it is when you're striving to teach other people. Yeah, I'm down in Low Pro. I'm in Kelowna, BC. And yes, in all fairness, I do meet people for coffee that come into town. It's just a question of whether or not they've come into town look for me. But yeah, I'm definitely Canadian. Second generation Canadian. I did live up in Barrie for a couple of months. That was enough. Lived in Barrie, Ontario, and I visited Toronto. I visited a number of places up there years ago. For obvious reasons, I quit traveling. Like this reunion I just went to is the first one. It's the first time I've left my 2-block area, really. In the last 10 years, I've left the 2-block area I live in, 2 blocks either side, so technically 4, right? Maybe 24 times in the last decade. And then when the reunion came up, I went back to my hometown in Comox. I tell you, that was stressful beyond belief for me. And this is one of the reasons I don't travel a lot, is I get lost too easily. But I have never treated anybody from any country any different than I treat the people I know and that I know locally. I just don't. From my way of thinking, people are simply people. And this is why I get along with a lot of the races I get along with, because I treat them just like anybody else. I don't see a difference other than, physical configuration, and certain cultures have different outlooks. But the reality of that is, in my home, I have certain rules. Okay, if you're going into somebody's home, follow their rules. Okay, you must follow the laws of the land in which you are. Now, the obvious one to point out, is if you ever want to, low pro, you're in a beautiful position if you're up in that area. You can even see the house I used to live in, which was on 39 Harding Avenue. They don't live there anymore. The people I was with are long gone. One of them died, the other one moved. I fortunately never had the displeasure of going to a hospital in Ontario. I think I'm going to keep it that way. I won't go to the hospitals here, so. But no, when you're going into somebody's home or into somebody's business, you must follow the laws of the land in which you are. Now, to this end, if you're in a home, and I'm going to bring up smoking only because it's an obvious example. Okay, in your home, let's say your community says it's okay to smoke anywhere you want. You can in your home. As a matter of fact, you're absolutely encouraged to do so if it's your way of looking at it. You can sit there and go, no, in my home, you cannot smoke. Okay, and it's perfectly fine, karmically speaking. Okay, but if the community says, in this community, you cannot smoke, you cannot conversely say, in my home, you're allowed to, because your home is within the community. Therefore, your home must follow community law. Okay, a lot of different cultures, they say, take your shoes off at the door. Then you must take your shoes off at the door. In my house, I recommend you don't take the shoes off at the door. The carpet bands that hold the carpet in place, in many cases, are exposed. Leaving your shoes on is a real good idea, because real painful if you don't. Yeah, the planet is really not that small. I still prefer dealing with people face to face. And what I've found with many companies, if I've got an option between dealing with a company locally face to face or dealing with a company over the phone, I will take them face to face, even if it costs a little more. See, I gave up the whole idea of online gaming, primarily because computers don't work well for me. But when you're aiming at getting out from behind the 8-ball, the trick is to figure out 2 major factors. One, where you're standing as compared to where the 8-ball is. And much more importantly, in a lot of ways, this one here, and I've got to get some more work done on this. I really have to take time for it. But this little thing here, those 4 words, we should do it this way. It's probably easier to read. I read both directions. Those 4 words, I've got that in my office, right handy, obviously. I've got a copy of it on my fridge and one on my front door. Those are the 4 most powerful words in combination regarding self-esteem, self-motivation, self-direction, all of those things. Okay. And net result, when I came to that conclusion, this book fell into place. Actually, in all fairness, this book was written before the other. Buddy of mine used to smoke 4 packs a day, and he's down to, he vapes now, and it costs him a fraction of the cost. But here's something most people won't tell you, low pro, and I can virtually guarantee that the people that are making the cigarettes aren't going to tell you. There is a way to cure smoking, to stop smoking, if you desire to stop smoking. And again, this is one of those neat little things. This is one of those tools I discovered decades ago and has helped a staggering number of people. It's one of the few tools I offer people that I've never used and I never will use. But understand, I never started smoking, as long as we don't count marijuana. But there is a way to quit smoking cigarettes without withdrawals, without replacement medication or replacement activities, without replacement, using gum or something to this effect. You can actually quit smoking if you desire to quit. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. Vape is a better option. Yeah, there is a taste with bubblegum. I don't like the flavor of bubblegum personally. Of course, I'm not about to start vaping for pretty much the same reason. I did get into drugs and alcohol. I managed to walk out of both of them. Coffee, quite seriously, I drink coffee a lot, but that's because I don't like the flavor of water. Everything, and the funny part there, low pro, nicotine does have some healthy properties. I do not deny that. It's the amount that people put in. Okay, there is some benefit to most things taking place. But I love people when they turn around and go, if it's natural, it's good for you. And the answer there is absolutely not. Point in fact, arsenic is natural, but it's not really good for you in larger quantities. Okay, I mean, apple seeds themselves have arsenic in them. And it's not going to cause a problem if you eat an apple seed. But if you drink a cup of arsenic, it could be a bit of an issue. I love that question. It's, the problem that they're talking about is not, honestly, in my opinion, I don't know what it is with nicotine, because the reality of it is tobacco itself isn't actually an addictive plant. From everything I've come to understand, the tobacco itself isn't the problem, it's what they're adding to it. Oh, I used to drink off the bottom of a glacier. Where I lived on the island, we'd go up onto the. Well, that's exactly the point, low bro. And this is why we run into the problem. We're taught, buy everything on credit, get a loan. Get a loan, buy stuff now, get the immediate gratification now. This is the important factor. Okay. And unfortunately, that itself, and sometimes it's convenient. Okay. But we're taught that immediate gratification is the way of the world. That you've got to be open 24/7. Okay. You want to run a business, you want to be successful, you've got to be at the beck and call of your customers. Take a look at the old moguls. Hudson Bay Company is about 330 years old now. Might be a little older. Okay. And they certainly weren't open 24/7. Okay. You take a look at all of the major companies, of the older major companies, they did not build it on being open 24/7. What they did was went, I'm open, I've got a good service. You show up when I'm open and I'll serve you. I saw in an auto shop one day, I saw a brilliant little sign. It goes, we have available low prices, good service, fast service, good quality service and fast service. Pick two. You're not getting the whole package. It's just not going to happen. No, in all fairness there, low pro, I've never been to Muskoka. At least not that I'm aware of. Unless Muskoka happens to be between Barrie, Ontario and Toronto. Because, I went down the 401, but that was pretty much it. And of course, when I went to Windsor, I flew in. But, the idea that everything in moderation. Gambling is fun. You can have a lot of fun. It's a great way to kill a day off. But if you get addicted to it, if you get addicted to that flash and pump, it's going to create a problem. Food is something that is wonderful to experience in decent quality, in quantities. The reality of it is, all of these things, if you take anything out of balance, okay, what ends up happening is your life goes into a tilt. Picture a three-legged stool. If any one of those legs is off kilter, okay, that stool is not going to be stable. Yeah, I went the wrong way for that. This is why the three laws I follow. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. And energy out, energy in. Those three laws are each equally important, just like the three legs in a three-legged stool. Every one of them has to be taken into consideration at an equal balance point. It's like there's four aspects of your life that have to be in balance. Okay, but you split it up over the course of a week. Don't try and do it over the course of a day because of one little factor. Very few jobs will let you work 6 hours a day. Okay, so you look at over the course of a week. You split it in 4 sections. Your personal time, that's when you do your hobbies, when you do the things that you personally like to do. Maybe you like going for a long drive or a long bike ride on your own, or a long walk. Maybe you just like sitting and staring at the stars. Okay, and that's all you want to do for your own personal recharge time. That's one. The second avenue is your interpersonal, which includes that special someone, family, friends, coworkers, even strangers that you may run into. Okay, that's your second section. Your third part is your money. Okay, how you earn your money or how you're getting educated to earn your money. Okay, there's the third one. Those three are while you're awake. The fourth one, which most people forget about, the majority of people, what they forget about is sleep. And you do require sleep. Low Pro, the answer to your question is I bill myself as a spiritual guide. I'm working as a professional psychic and an internationally published author. The internationally published author is what I'm aiming at actually turning into my primary income. Okay. I have no idea how much money I've sunk into it, but I am in the process of just starting now to go back through my records. And I've got records all the way back to 2007, except from 218 to 220. Actually, I think 221. Okay. So from my standpoint, you get an idea of where you're standing. Make sure you understand what you're looking for. But the biggest stress point that I found myself in trying to get out from behind the 8 ball was I was trying to figure out how to fit in. Now I got asked again last night how much of the information I put out is absolute fact. And, the first time the first time I was asked that question, a few years back, I think, I was asked that question on Dave's show. Somebody came out and asked it the wrong way. They asked me why they should believe me. And of course, I wasn't thinking. And it was just a reactionary thing. I just turned around, looked at the person, and I says, what makes you think I care whether you believe what I'm telling you? And here's the reality. It's not that I don't feel that what I'm telling people, it's not that what I'm telling people isn't accurate from my standpoint. It's that I cannot guarantee that what I do will work for everybody. I can tell you I'm not about to lie to make somebody feel better. When I got into that industry, it was quite by accident. The first time I ever actually knew what somebody was going through, I was only 10 years old. And I was sitting on the park bench, and a nice looking little 16, 17-year-old lass sat down beside me. I never did figure out if she actually said anything. Okay, she sat down, and what I picked up off her was, I don't understand it. I've had a boyfriend for the last 2 years. Now we won't, and we used to do things together. Now he won't touch me, won't even look at me. Why not? So I'm sitting there, I'm 10 years old, and I'm not thinking. I just looked at her and I says, well, because he's sleeping with your best friend. And she goes, pardon? I said, he's sleeping with your best friend. Now, as a 10-year-old, I'm seeing this kid crawl into bed with somebody else. But at 10 years old, you're not thinking what sleeping with somebody means at this point. So she says, well, what do you mean sleeping with him or with her? I says, they're crawling into bed together. Well, how do you know it's my best friend? I says, technically I don't. But she looks like this, behaves like this, you met her like this. And this 16-year-old looks at me and goes, that's my best friend. I says, I know I'm overstepping, but you might want to redefine your definition of best. In all fairness, Malu, I don't know. Okay, I get images, I get told this is what's going on. When I tell people I'm getting told such and such, it literally means that's what I'm doing. I'm being told. Or I've been known, like a while back, I can sense things that go beyond the normal levels. And it's been that way all my life. Okay. The neat thing with it was she turned around, and that was where things went sour and went south for me. Because understand, I was living in a small Bible Belt. Like, I was living in Comox. Bible Belt, part of the island. So, of course, being this way inclined did not sit well with people. And from that point forward, I had people looking for me after school, before school, at lunch, at recess, trying to figure out where their life was going. Now, understand, I grew up on a military base in the middle of the Vietnam War. Okay, and bearing in mind I was picking up what people are going through, picture the nightmares I had the fun with. Okay. But I told people I was getting approached by these people. Well, at my 30-year grad reunion, the first person I ran into took one look at me and goes, I said, weren't you one of the counselors? I says, no. I said, I was actually a student. I just happened to do more work than both counselors combined. Because kids won't talk to adults on the whole. And so, that's been my life the whole way along. The writing is something that I do because I enjoy it. And, this story here, like this one creates the backbone. Okay. This one tells how to take an actual business and make it work. But these ones are the backbone of what I'm really working on. Because these are the story that I wrote in grade 10. Okay. They are built off of that storyline. In all fairness, low pro, everyone is literally born what we call psychic. Now, I prefer the term sensitive because I simply pick up emanations that many people ignore. Okay, psychic has a real bad connotation in today's world. Okay, it's very much like in the world of little people. People under 4 foot. I think 4'10" is the mark now. They many of them really take offense to the term dwarf, even though the illness has been quantified as dwarfism. But the reason they take offense to it is because they are, they're short, but they used to be billed in the sideshows as dwarves. See, my biggest problem right now, and this is one of the reasons I became reclusive, is because when I talk about feeling what's going on around me, I feel the anguish the planet is going through. And of course, with my past life memories, and that is one of those neat little things that gets into all sorts of different areas. But when you're aiming at getting out from behind the 8 ball, knowing where you're standing, what has put you there, okay, is there a difference between bad and evil? Probably. Once you understand how you operate and you come to understand who you are, that's where you'll find peace of mind. Not by figuring out how to fit in with everybody else. The most difficult thing that I came to understand, because I keep getting asked by people if I've got money. I had somebody the other day, I met him twice in a restaurant. Okay. I met the man twice in a restaurant. And he phones me up one day. He says, we know each other. We're good friends. Can you loan me X number of dollars so I can get home? I had to actually turn him down. Because number one, I didn't know the guy from Adam, other than he had a very different outlook on life than what I did and seemed to think we thought the same way, which was pretty much wrong. But I asked a friend of mine years ago, I says, why is it people keep asking me if I'm asking me for money? I said, it's not like I have a lot, and I really don't, But he turned around, he never even blinked. He goes, you're bearing. He says, you walk into a place as though you own it, as though you belong there. I said, so? I do. He goes, yeah, but everybody assumes that means you've got money. And the reality is, no, it doesn't. Okay. It just means I know where I'm fitting. Okay. And in order to get out from behind the 8 ball, first, you got to know where the 8 ball is. Well, I'm going to put the 8 ball at this point, where you have enough money where your living expenses are covered without a threat. Where you can comfortably pay your rent, your utilities, your food, entertainment, put some aside for savings. That's the 8 ball you're striving to get in front of. Okay, that's the first barrier. And that is absolutely correct. Sometimes you do. I didn't learn that until really late, and I'll tell you, it put me into a lot of binds. But that's where I put the first barrier, is at that mark. Then you start working above it. But every time you get above it, bring the bottom up. Like, for instance, I know what I've got in the bank. Okay, at the end of the month, I will check and see. And as long as I'm 1 penny above what I was on, of what I had at the beginning, I've moved in the right direction. Okay, this is where you have to realize being comfortable here with who you are, with where your life is. That's the key to really getting on your feet. Okay, but you're the one that's going to have to do the work. When we take a look at the whole, you can take a look at everybody's past. We all have certain things in common. Everybody that you ever run into is right here, right now. And this is the only time in existence that you can ever change anything. Okay. You can postpone it. You can put it off. I used to be fabulous at procrastinating. Nice part there is it used to take concentration. I'd go, no, I don't want to do that right now. And I'd push it off. Now it's just a natural trait. The old saying was, never do today what you can put off till tomorrow. Well, I'm inherently lazy, I think. So I just went, never do what you can put off. Why bother quantifying it? But where it comes to getting out from behind the eight ball, you got to know where your boundary is. For me, that boundary I recommend is when you can afford to actually pay your living expenses. Okay, once you've got that, then you set the bar higher, which is why I'm currently aiming at the 3,800. And it's why I'm looking at the book sales and going, that's what I desire to open up. That's the path that I desire to get onto. And that's the one that if I can guide even one person to make that move from struggling, like I used to be one paycheck away from being on the street. When I figured out that I don't have to make everybody else happy, I don't have to fit in. When I got to that point, my stress level collapsed. I went, okay, I'm not going to work the way other people do. Now, fortunately, the website company that I've got that has put my website up, fortunately, the liaison that I work with, she got the message real quick. When I told her technology does not work well for me, she went out of her way to make sure that we could communicate properly and make things happen. Net result, the site's up. About a month ahead of time, by the way. They told me it would likely be a couple of months to get it up and running. Okay, and due to the fact that I am not a website designer, okay, when you take a look at your own world, now, let's back things up just a fraction. I probably should have started way back there, but what the heck? Okay, when you take a look at your house, just take a look at it while we're sitting here. Is there anything in your house you're not content with that is within visual range? Okay, that's where you start, where it comes to changing the way your life is working and the way the energy in your world is working. Now, here's a neat little thing that has nothing to do with that. Everybody says the internet is a fabulous place, is a fabulous resource. This little book, no, this one I didn't write. Okay, but this book has a better vocabulary base for me for different words, okay, than I have ever found on the internet. Okay, this one in particular is a godsend compared to the internet. The internet is basically useless when you put this one there. Okay, in terms of finding synonyms and other, and variations and what have you. But I came to the conclusion that trying to fit in wasn't working. Okay, there's a t-shirt that says it really well. And the t-shirt says, well, still preparing for buying and renovating it. You got your work cut out for you there, Malu. I won't buy a house. In all likelihood, I'll never buy a house because I'm not trades inclined, and I'm not trades inclined, and I'm not inclined to do outside work. I've got a bad leg. So where I'm sitting is perfect for me. Okay, because if I have a problem, I just phone the landlord. See, now the neat thing there, when you're looking at renovating, when you look at the house, okay, there's 3 major areas in the house that you have to look at. Okay, and this all applies to energy flow. Now, if you've looked into Feng Shui, the way all the books are written about it, tell you, they work beautifully for Eastern culture, but you got to remember, Eastern culture is built. The entire culture is built around Feng Shui. However, in Western culture, the principle still holds. Now, if you're in the process of renovating, okay, the 3 areas that you look at, the office, wherever you work on your money, that is the brain of both the house and the home. Okay, the way to get the heart of the house and home working is a 3-chamber heart. Your kitchen, your dining room, and your living room. Okay, and then the other area that is really critical is the hallways. Okay, if you can walk down your hallway without stepping over things, then your hallway energy flow is running perfectly. Okay. What it works like if you've got it all cluttered is it kind of like getting a whole pile of cholesterol into your arteries. It stops the energy flow, and net result, all sorts of other side effects happen, not the least of which is lethargy and depression. The neat little trick to it, from what I found, like I do implement feng shui from the standpoint of organizing the energy flow. I've got my office where I've got everything right here. Now, for somebody that is not technologically oriented, I've got a laptop and 3 extra monitors. And then I've got my printer and my phone. Okay. That's where I run all my office from. Okay. And the reality is you get the energy there working as quick as you can, even while you're doing your renovations. That is where you put the brain power. Yeah, I mean, and again, what I'm seeing in the chat room here is people that are automatically doing exactly what I'm referring to. You pick your tasks and break them down into smaller tasks, and the reason for that is because that way, at the end of the day, you get a 15-minute task racked off and check it off. Then what you've got is I've done what I was aiming for. I got something accomplished. If you pick a 2-hour task and you get pulled away 15 minutes into it, 2 things happen. One, you've got to find another 2-hour block to try and get that done. And the second is you feel like you didn't get anything done to start with. The nice part about it is when you break things down into piecework, 15-minute to half-hour jobs. Okay. Every time you finish one, check it off and add a third one to the bottom. Don't forget to include things like, I've got to grab lunch. Like when I'm done this video, that's one of the things I have to do is go out and grab lunch. Because quite frankly, it's going to be necessary. But you've got to know. See, the neat thing is this. You don't actually have to know. You don't have to know where you're heading in life. We're taught if you don't have people are taught if you don't have your life in order, you don't have a plan in place by the time you're 20, you're going to fail. We're taught to fear not having that goal. And many times that fear will make people choose a direction that isn't good for them or that isn't going to hold their attention. The reality of it is this. In my experience, now I've been working in the consulting field since I was 10. So I got 49 years under my belt. Okay, 36 of it professionally where I've been generating an income. Okay, and what I found is that the massive majority of people are in their late 40s to early 50s by the time they figure out exactly what they want to do for a living. Okay, or what they want to do for their life. But we're taught to fear not knowing. Had a client come to me one day. When she was 16 years old, she had really desired to become a doctor. Here she was at 52, and she still really wanted to become a doctor, but didn't know if she could. So I told her, I said, look, number one, you're not going to make it by the time you're 16. Okay, you're just not going to make it. Okay, but there's no reason you can't become a doctor. Well, I worked with her for the next 8 years. She got her MD. I told you won't make it by the time you're 20. Right. But I said, there's no reason you can't make it. I said, the reality is when you get your MD, you won't have long before you hit the so-called age of retirement. Okay. And just before she turned 60, she got her MD. Right. Mission accomplished. And like I told her, I said, just think of the example you just set. Okay, take a look at that. You're in your 50s and you're doing the same workload that people in their 20s are doing. Yeah, absolutely. The reality is, low pro. the more clutter you've got, and being a professional pack rat for the majority of my life, it played absolute havoc. But the principle of feng shui is very much a real thing, as is the way you look. Now, in case you hadn't noticed, as I put it, I'm not a fashion statement. I had somebody behind me in lineup one day. I made that comment, and she pipes up and goes, "You are a fashion statement. Not a good one, but you are a fashion statement." Now, I have decided that I've been upgrading my office and been cleaning out the clutter in my home. I am going to be upgrading my wardrobe. Not because of the fact anybody else told me I have to. Okay. But because I desire to. When I went and got my hair cut, I phoned my other half up and I said, "Look, do you prefer hair long or short?" At the time, my hair was down. I said, "Do you prefer long hair or short hair?" And she goes, "Well," she says, "it's not a make or break deal." But she says, "Since you asked, I prefer it shorter." I says, "You misunderstand." But she says, "Don't cut it on my account." Right. And I said, "No, you misunderstand. I was planning on cutting it, but if you preferred it longer, I would have left it." You know, absolutely. The neat part about feng shui, people talk about your appearance or about the clothing making the person. Absolutely 100% wrong. Okay, and this is why I say that. If the clothing made the person, everybody in the military of the same rank would behave the same way. Everybody in a private school that requires a uniform would behave the same way. Okay. Everybody wearing a clergy outfit, a robe, would behave exactly the same way. Now, this is blatantly, is patently not the case. However, what I will tell you is the way you look, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself will have an impact, and what you wear will absolutely alter the way you feel, and thus the way people treat you. And you can test this out for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Okay. It's very much like there is a massive difference between the way that the hotel people will treat you if you show up in a cab as compared to if you show up in a limousine. Okay. But that can work to your advantage. Okay. Again, getting out from behind the eight ball, it's not just a question of money. It's a question of the way you're looking at yourself as compared to the world. Ultimately it boils down to the better you feel about you, the more you realize that you personally have value, the better off you are, and the faster things will move for you in what you consider a positive direction. But understand, there are people out there that think they should be treated better. Okay. There are people, and there are people that think they are in a position because they've got more money, they should be treated better than you are. And I'm telling you, that is not the case. I've never held that as the case. The first job I ever had, I was working for a very prestigious golf club. And the manager gave me a job to do, and there's millionaires all over the place. Right. And my boss come out and told me he wanted me to set something up in a certain way. And that was fine. I went to set it up. Then the supervisor, who the boss had told me do what he says, came out in front of the boss, tore a strip off me for not doing it the way he wanted it done. And then the boss came back at me when I changed gears, and it started going back and forth. I finally got fed up with it. And with a room full of millionaires, I looked at my boss and my supervisor, and I says, "When you two grow up and can get along, talk to me. Until then, I'm making my own rules." And I walked out of the room. Now, why I didn't get fired, I don't know. Okay, Justin, glad you could make it. I hope you're doing well today. I try and keep an eye on people coming in. So, The reality is, as soon as you realize that you have value to you, this is when people start to pay attention. Not always. Okay. I got told, I was in lineup one day, and I told the guy flat, I made a comment to a guy. Basically, I told him that he should leave the building. I wasn't working there, but he was tearing a strip off somebody. Right. And I got fed up with it, and I just finally cut him off. And I says, what seems to be the problem? So he turns around and he starts in on me. I says, wait a minute. I think you've made a very serious mistake. And he looks at me and goes, and what mistake do you think I made? I says, I think you think I care. I says, frankly, this might be the worst restaurant in the world. You don't like it, leave. He goes, well, you're being awfully rude. I said, dang it, I thought I was getting good at it. You know, he ended up storming off out of the building. I don't see a difference between people as far as the way I treat them. Okay. You know, the neat little part from my standpoint is once you understand that you personally have value, have worth, that's where you start making the changes. Okay, take a look at the area around you and ask yourself, are you content with the way your world is, with everything in it? If you are, this is absolutely fantastic. Okay, if not, it's time to start altering things. You know, it's time to start really looking at the world you're in and go, what am I not content with? Because as you alter the energy of the things that you're not content with to things you are content with, what you'll find is that all you're left with is a world you're content with. Net result, your energy level, your attitude, your mood, all of it starts to climb. And by the way, so will your productivity level. Okay. The other thing, and this applies really to household and business. If you've got people that are sharing the home with you, or you've got people working for you, complimenting them on what they're doing right is going to work better. Even complimenting yourself on what you do right. You know, I got thinking about it. It works better than threatening and punishing. Okay. The saying that I live by is very simple. And that is, you minimize the negative, you maximize the positive. By doing that, by focusing on the positive things that are happening, doesn't mean the negative ones don't happen. Okay. Doesn't mean that there aren't bad things going on. You know, the neat little part about changing your life is this. When you focus on the positive things, on the positive changes you're making, like for instance, I used to sleep 8 hours a day. Okay, and I have to bring that down again because I always wake up anything over 6 and I'm an absolute wreck. But I got bored one day. You know, I figured everybody talks about needing 8 hours sleep. And what I ended up doing was I was bored, so I says, what would happen if you cut your sleep to 4 hours a night? If you cut your sleep to 4 hours a night and you don't lose quality of life, or your mood doesn't change, what happens if you stay stable? And what I came to understand, if you're wondering why I'm pausing funny, is because I've got a real severe case of vertigo right now, and that happens for me. And since I don't have my fan here, I'm just going to tolerate it for a bit. You know what happens? Boy, that threw my level off. Told you this was going to be a bad day today. But now I may have to do that. This is going to be a real silly stunt. Don't go away. I'm just going to go grab a fan before my temperature goes right off the charts. So vertigo really is. So don't go away. I'll be right back. I know exactly where the fan is. This is an abnormality, but I have no idea how to pause this thing. So I'll be back ASAP. No, I'm not done. Well, that's a first for me. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that I have always had a complication with. My temperature tends to run a little high. So you're just going to have to bear with me because it's either that or I pass out. And I'm thinking that's a bad idea. Okay, pardon the noise level, but I don't get options. Anyway, once you figure out that you personally have value, okay, that's where you start changing things. Because I will tell you, the more in tune with you are, the happier you are with yourself, the more you're going to be able to focus on getting to where you desire to be. The neat part about it is you don't actually have to know where you desire to be. The mistake people make is saying, I've got to have a plan for success. No, you've got to have a plan for change. And the plan is real simple. If you're not content with something, alter it. Okay, now one thing I will tell you about Feng Shui. Okay, a lot of people in Western society, you'll have a mirror right as you come through the door. Any reflective surface coming through that you hit as soon as you come through the door will bounce the energy straight back out the door. Except there is a counterpoint. Pick up, and it doesn't matter if it's a live plant, a picture of a plant, a decal, doesn't matter. On mirrors, I recommend decals. But you at least in the corners, you put a plant, okay, or at the compass points or something to that effect, so that the plant is on the mirror. Okay, and this is why I say decals. You can still see through it. But that will stop the energy from bouncing out. And again, it really boils down to focusing on the positive side. Now, I'm below where I desire to be in a lot of ways right now. But I'm in better shape than where I was. And the reality for you is you've got to look at it the same way. When you're doing renovations, there is a neat little problem. 9 times out of 10, Justin, much as I appreciate the idea, most of the time I don't wear shoes. I wear socks. Right. But vertigo for me can happen in a very quick fashion. Part of it, I think, and I can't do anything about it right this moment anyway, it seems to be an issue for me that if my salt level drops, that's where I run into problems. But the moving air does help compensate for it. And again, this is one of those things that you look at going, what works? Now, what works for me medically, 9 times out of 10, the doctors won't like. Okay. And this is why I say it's not a question of are doctors necessary. Okay. Doctor, when you take a look at it, I like the way they put it in Doctor Strange. You know, the MRI scans, the neural scan, the nerve networks, Feng Shui, or not Feng Shui, Reiki, energy healing, prayer acupuncture, all of these are little pieces of a bigger picture. It's when you put them all together that it will work. You know, that it will work, that it will work better. Okay. You take care, Malu. I'll be doing that as well. As soon as I get done with this video, I'll be taking off to go and get myself something to eat. You know, I just noticed that. You know, I'm looking at the video that just come up. Usually I've got my shirt tucked in, but apparently moving this backrest behind me has done a number on it. But that's okay. I never claimed to be like it. Well, actually I did. I told you I'm not much of a fashion statement. Okay. That sign on my door right behind me that I'm just looking at now. Right, that's my company name, and the one that's on that's actually flipped around backwards actually says on air. If it's hanging on the other side, if it's hanging there, okay, my son knows not to open the door, not to knock on the door unless the house is on fire. You know, the nice part. Well, there's a way I've never had it put before. Thank you so much, Justin. Once you understand what you personally are content with, whether or not you're actually content. Okay, that's how you figure out how to get out from behind the eight ball. Know where you're standing, know what you're not content with, and have that marker that tells you there's the first step. Now, my first step was having rent in the bank. Rent ahead of schedule. Okay, that was my first goal. And you always set the goal a little higher. As you reach your goal, add a new one that's a little higher up. My ultimate goal is not so much being a millionaire, although I do think that's going to end up being a side effect. Ultimately, the two big goals I've got, and many of you have already started books that somebody said, you're not good enough, that's not a good enough story to publish. Got news for you. There are, I think, about somewhere between 7.6 and 7.9 billion people on the planet right now. Somebody's going to like it. Okay. But the trick is to write it. If you're writing a book, write it because you desire to do it. Okay. The money's got to be a side effect. Where it comes to your house, organize it where you're content with. Okay. If other people like it, this is great. I had somebody come to my house years ago. And of course, at the time I was living in what amounted to a warehouse. Right. And World Bigfoot, welcome aboard. I had a guy come in. He took a look at my house. He goes, this place is a dump. I said, you don't like it? You know where the front door is. I talked to him 5 years later. Right. For me, I'm not known for being subtle. But I will tell you, when you get an idea in your head, when you go, this is the goal I've got, you break that down into 15-minute to half-hour tasks where possible and work towards it. One step at a time will bring you the success that you're looking at. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm in the middle of doing, one of the books I'm in the middle of writing is a book that actually gives a formula for success that is replicatable by anybody, no matter whether you're a pauper or a multimillionaire. It doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter what race you are. I figured out a formula that is absolutely transferable to any situation, but it will lead to success. How can I say this? Well, because I learned English. Will it absolutely work for everyone? From what I've looked at, from what I've seen, the answer is yeah. I've yet to see a situation that doesn't translate properly. The nice part about it is that when you get those goals checked off, okay, I started off going, okay, when I finally said, I'm changing my life, I'm no longer living this way. Now, where it came to my weight, I'd hit 246, and I looked at that and went, I am not breaking 250. Because you can get all the thoughts in the world you desire. Until you get that emotional imperative here, the odds are you're not going to be staying with whatever the goal is that you've mentally come to. Okay, when I hit that point, I hit 246, I went, I am not breaking it. Okay, and I immediately started to cut my weight down. I started to drop it off. Got below 220. Okay, and then I started to climb up a little, and I got down around 214. I started to put on a couple pounds. I went, I am not breaking 220. So it started to drop again. Got down to 201 and then started to climb again. And I went, I'm not breaking 210. Well, I stopped at 208 and started to come down again. Okay, I'm not entirely certain what I'm weighing at, but what the point of that was, is you pick the goal and you keep raising the bar. Or in the case of weight, you drop the bar. But I will tell you, it's going to take work. I don't honestly know. And I don't know if I know how to figure it out. Where are we? 2.245. I just need a brain box. This one will work. Oh, that one will work better. 2.245. Give me 5 seconds. Just call the calculator up here. 203 divided by 2. See, I went through school at the time the transitions were being made. Okay. The answer to your question there is 90.4 kilo. Oh, wait, there we are. Yeah, that's the answer there, Justin, is 90.4. I went through school when we were transitioning from imperial to metric. So I learned the translations, but I still think in in terms of imperial. Well, that's the silly thing, Justin. No, it's not bad. According to Canadian Medical, at my height, I'm 5'8". I should apparently only be 145 pounds, which is absolutely insane. Yep, that would do it. If you're working in commercial work, a lot of it still gets done that way. But when you pick a goal, like for me, it was a question of my weight. I'm aiming to break 200 before the end of the year. Okay, I seem to have plateaued in around the 203 mark right now, but I am intending on dropping below the 200. My father told me flat out, never go below 180. Your bone density won't hold it. Right. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you look at my size. If I were to drop and to get down to what Canadian Medical says, I should be 60 pounds lighter than what I am currently. Now, can you picture what that would look like? So the weight I started there, my finances was real simple. Okay, I looked at and went, I want to have rent in the bank before the end of the month, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, that was where I started. Now I'm pushing the limits up. And I am now sitting at a point where financially I'm doing, in my eyes, reasonably well. I think so. I'm not entirely certain there, Justin. I haven't looked at all of them. Of course, I'm not in construction. Of course, the reality is if I can drive a nail straight, it was an accident. But you pick the goals, like the clutter around my area, around my home here. I'm altering around my office. I'm altering all the stuff here. This will all be turned into inventory because the excess inventory I've got of the books is out in my storage unit right now. And I'm going to be bringing it back in as I get rid of the clutter here so that all my inventory is right here when somebody says, this is a book I desire to have. Okay, I can just go sign it, drop it in the mail, and it's gone. Okay. But by doing that, it'll turn this into a functional brain. Okay. But you look at where your boundaries are. What is important to you, not what's important to me. Okay. Because in all fairness, if your life isn't running smoothly, it really isn't going to have a lot of impact on mine. But my hope is, that's it. Argue which side of the... Hey, guys, you want to argue which side of the road is the right one? Go to Mexico. They don't have a side of the road from what I gather. That's always fun. Only if I'm real careful. It's really, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. With finishing nails, I don't have a problem. Trying to get a 3-inch spike or even a 2-inch to go in straight doesn't work as well. I mean, I tried playing golf one year, once. Now, I'm not talking mini golf. I mean on a full course. It took me with a base and with a golf club, 5 strokes to tee off. Okay, and that's with the ball not moving. Picture how much fun I had with baseball. So from the reality of it is when you figure out where you're standing, Set your own bar for what you feel is where the 8 ball is. What's the first goal that you've got? Now, my first goal in sorting out my house was getting my office set, my office area where the computer is, so that I can operate on it. Okay. Unlike my dining room table, which we did do minor operations on when I was a kid, anyway. See, the neat thing about getting out from behind the 8 ball is once you feel the drive here, that pull to get out of where you are. Okay. Once you get that drive, that's when things shift for you. Okay. The thought is great, but unless you have that imperative emotional drive, the odds are you're not going to follow through with it much. For me, I started with my office area with the actual computer station. Now I'm expanding to get rid of the extra junk. And bear in mind, I spent 56 years collecting junk. Real strong, well-ingrained habit. But you pick your goal, and then you break that goal down into smaller tasks. By doing that, you will end up landing on your feet. Okay, now, could I take the time to fight with computers until I figure them out? Certainly. It's just not one of my real strong interests. Which is why I turn around and turn to other people and go, this is what I require. Please do me a favor, make that happen. Most of the stuff I've got at this point, no. It's a lot of clutter. It's a lot of it at this point I had for a lot of reasons. But junk is usually memories. My memories are finally actually really solid. There is some stuff I won't be getting rid of. That's totally impractical. One thing, for instance, that I doubt I will ever get rid of is I've got a stuffed bull. Okay, that's about that tall. I got it when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I won it at the fair. It was the first stuffed animal I ever won. Right. The biggest stuffed animal I ever won I did at the end of a crossbow, but that's a whole different issue. Now the question for you there, low pro. Are you in fact a hoarder or just a pack rat? And here's the difference that I found. Okay. A hoarder is somebody that keeps actual garbage, as in banana peels, dead animals are left alone, moldy bread is left in the bag in the house. To my understanding, that's a hoarder. Okay. A pack rat is somebody that has things like you've got. Okay, 15,000 records. By the way, you're sitting on a small fortune. A pack rat is my brother. Well, actually, every member of my bloodline were pack rats, starting with my grandfather, born in 1902. Okay. Now, I got a kick out of it. I used to be a severe pack rat. You would never see the space over here that you're looking at here. You would have never seen the wall. Okay, and yet, at that time, I could walk into a room, move 3 boxes out of the way, and grab exactly what I was aiming for. Okay. That works. If you're a producer, I can understand why you've got pack rat. Yeah, you definitely have a lot of money, but you're a lot of value in your records. But if you're a producer, then you're going to have a lot of it. Me, I'm an author. Okay. And I've got 7 books in print right now. 30 more I'm adding to my list as I go along. Well, no, I agree with you there. Sometimes they should have. What we learned was I used to be really bad. I used to collect. Now, bear in mind, I'm not a mechanic and I'm not trades inclined. But I used to take stereos, and in one case, I pulled a stereo apart, bolt for bolt, nut for nut, spring for spring. Had them all sorted out. My landlord at the time ran into a problem with a sump pump, and it was an ancient sump pump, and he says, I don't know if I can even get parts. I says, well, what are you looking for? So he described this little spring he needed. And I says, hang on, disappeared into my own shop, in my own storage unit, and came back with this tiny little spring that came off the rocker arm of an old stereo, of an old record player. Handed it to him. I said, will this work? And he goes, that's absolutely perfect. That's the sign of a pack rat. Have things that have a use, but you may never use. But never hang on to the banana peels and what have you. You know, from this point, it boils down to I've got all this stuff behind me. Now, this is only one room. The rest of the house has to be sorted out as well. But the way to get out from behind the 8-ball is to figure out where you're standing, where you consider a decent mark is to get to, and then break it down into smaller steps. Okay, if you're climbing a 10-foot ladder, you never look at the 10th foot, at the 10th rung. You look at the first rung and then work your way up it. Every step will take you closer. Okay, and eventually you'll get to the top. Well, when you get to the top, now you got to figure out where to go from there. And again, you know, people talk about the first step being the hardest. I'm telling you, the first step is easy. You know, if we take a look at children, the first step is easy to do. They make that first step. The second one is usually an accidental compensation. It's the third one where you start deciding that's where I'm heading. Okay. Well, yeah, the ladder has to sit on the floor. You know, that's where you're starting. Pick the goal you've got and break it down into smaller tasks. When you get there, pick another goal. This is how you go to where you're going. Now, there's 4 steps to success. You've got to have a purpose. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have the persistence to keep on said plan. And you've got to have the patience to let it work. Okay. Those 4 components, when you take a look at those, they will apply to any task, any goal that you set. Whether you're a pauper or a millionaire, it won't matter. Okay, now with this in mind, we've run a little over, but that's not a problem. Okay, I will be back. I will continue doing the journey, and I will be back again next week. But until then, thanks so much for joining me today. If you liked the video, you know, if you like the feed, absolutely give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And please do share this video with your friends or your enemies for that matter. Anyway, I will catch up with you again soon. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.